All right, welcome back. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another Zen Academy webinar presented by Zenlayer, and a happy New Year's to all of our friends and family around the world. Again, today, my name is Arthur. I'll be your host, and then with me, I have...
I'm Evan, and I'll also be your host.
There we go. All right. So we want to go ahead and just kind of kick off today's session with a little bit of an info share around some of our updates with Zenlayer's compute at our network on a global side. And then we'll be kind of diving into some best practices surrounding bare metal server migrations and expansions. So we'll be offering some perspectives on several topics from location selection to network builds and even compliance. Quick note here, please hold your questions for the Q&A session at the end, but feel free to drop any questions into the chat along the way. All right, so kicking off 2025, and we're only 1 month into the new year, and we are very excited to confirm a few new availability zones for our edge compute service, including Riyadh in Saudi Arabia and Singapore. This brings our total ZEC locations now to 6 on a global scale. Just a little bit about it, our edge compute operates alongside our robust and global network, and we are proud to not only support our customers, but also drive transformational edge services alongside them as well.
This year has gone pretty fast already, and we're coming off a lot of really interesting industry news. The tail end of 24, it brought some surprises in the comparative bare metal and edge compute marketplace, like the planned discontinuation of Equinix Metal, which is certainly a global provider and will hit reverberations throughout the marketplace. So the landscape is shifting, and we've compiled best practices, some common pitfalls, some things we've seen the market has some challenges with, and some use cases for our viewers and listeners. So thanks again for checking in with us, guys, especially when it comes on this webinar to migrating or expanding your compute stack. I think we'll have some good tidbits for you.
Awesome. Thank you, Evan.
Yep.
All right. So we'll kind of get into this. And, really, when we're approaching such a large and sort of complex topic like migrations, it's rarely singular, rarely a simple, just one task, right? Any number of goals and additional changes along the way could really change your requirements. Are you migrating or are you expanding? And there's just an endless amount of checklists and validations along the way, right? So migrations often go far beyond just the hardware and compute, even though we are terming this as a bare metal cloud sort of migration do's and don'ts. But alongside your hardware and your compute, of course, your networking, your performance, your application level consideration, these are all going to be vital aspects to keep in mind. So yeah, let's just break this down. So when we're evaluating a bare metal provider, right, what are we actually looking for? We definitely want to first consider some initial evaluations, as a customer, as a user, your own migration strategies, what are your timelines and everything else like that. And then working with a provider that provides very quick off-the-shelf resources that could be a great fit for some use cases. Maybe it's a temporary one, maybe it's a new market for you. And so, that type of deployment strategy could be great for you, but maybe your enterprise is a little bit more established. You're looking for more specialized solutions. You got specific scenarios for your customers. Definitely across the board, flexibility and expertise of that carrier are key aspects to keep in mind. All right, Evan, we have another section here for sort of ease of management, if you want.
Yeah,
on that a little bit. Yeah.
No, it's a great mention as well, because and I'll touch on this a couple times today. This is infrastructure as a service. You're going to depend on your vendor to be available, but this is a day-to-day service that you guys are going to manage. So the support teams you're going to interact with are the lifeblood of your business. If you've got clear escalation paths, notable troubleshooting processes, these are really good indicators for the right sort of vendor in the bare metal cloud and edge cloud universe. So especially if you're an enterprise or a mid-market company with enterprise ambitions, you might have specialized or specific workflows that you need to be considered, and you're going to need your vendors to comply to that sort of thing. So when this is executed well, it can accelerate teams, it can provide agility, transparency, not only during the solution build section, but across the entire pre and post sales process. You don't want to spend a lot of time working with a vendor just to do that for a month. You want to work, with the vendor for a long period of time. Let's talk a little bit about the builds.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, let's talk about the builds, right? So we can't really get far with when we're talking about deployments, builds, whether it's a new location for you, or anything else like that. What is a very core to this is location selection, mm-hmm. right? Where and what DCs, what country, what city will determine the bulk of sort of what resources are available to you, your performance ability in that particular region. And it really, really depends most often where your users are and what their sort of acceptable performance is, right?
Yeah. So, I mentioned it before, I'll say it again, bare metal cloud, edge cloud, this is another flavor of infrastructure as a service. It's rarely in competition with the hyperscalers. It's more of a supplementation of a comprehensive and global cloud strategy. These servers, they don't live on an island, right? They need to be turned up on demand. They need to be vertically integrated with the data center as a foundation and the network resources so that they can be actually used. So let me come up with an example or a use case. If you have a bare metal cloud or edge cloud instance, and the use case and intention for the deployment of this instance is that it's a network edge device, or if it's a host for your virtual network fabric, you probably going to want it to be in a highly connected data center. Yes, those highly connected data centers might be a little bit more expensive, but if your bare metal cloud vendor has already thought that out and has that data center as a part of its portfolio, it's going to be a lot easier for you to turn on for that particular use case. In comparison, if your bare metal cloud or your edge cloud use case is meant to augment your pre-existing compute resources, and you're going to drop your applications onto that and require more compute, but you also want to control your cost of goods sold, another data center might be a better fit. So in the end, the most mid-market and enterprise businesses are implementing a global multi-cloud strategy. The best bare metal cloud vendors are going to have both of those options that I just mentioned, as far as the foundation and the data center, as well as connectivity between the two. So you can have both use cases.
Absolutely. Thank you, Evan. That was very, very insightful. Terming it and kind of reframing it in some cases as an infrastructure as a service is very important to understand why these location is and sort of services available is so important. When a provider just says, hey, we have availability in this country, right? What does that really mean? What does that really entail? Sort of part and parcel with that is also the vendor consolidation side of things. So vendor consolidation in a new market that you're not familiar with can be a massive bonus for businesses, whether you're a large or a small enterprise business, especially when it starts involving important goals like sort of device and network service redundancy, your upstreams and your routing and considerations like that. Things like, for example, having the provider pre-deploy into a network neutral data center could mean, wildly different prices for your transit, for example. So these are just great points to hit. Mm-hmm. Okay, all right. That kind of wraps up our physical site location bit here, and we kind of want to move into a sort of a network focused section here next. So. So of course, when we're talking about network, right, we have our hardware, we have our data center, and now we want to talk about network. So we want to ensure, of course, operational efficiency for our customers and a smooth integration when you're doing migrations. A very secure and very robust network is very mandatory, but of course that means something different for your use case and all these different customers. So in our experience, since this happens to usually be the heart of the solution, right, we have everything else kind of figured out, but we're really working through the network and what providers they need to connect to, how the routing is really going to shake out, what type of CSPs and other services that they're connecting to, or as a service, as well. So, typical bare metal cloud environments and providers will have limitations in certain aspects. So, it's in short, we have to make sure to evaluate if they meet your network connectivity and performance requirements.
Yep, makes a lot of sense. These businesses out there are looking for turnkey solutions, and they want delivery that has ease of use as a part of the value proposition. So if you have a sprawling network, or if you're depending on throughput demand for resiliency of your service. Your vendors, your providers' ability to scale on demand can be really critical to your workflow. And at the same time, enterprise networks might prefer to work through phased approaches. Before you are going to throw all of your investment of time and energy and labor at a new or greenfield market, working with a bare metal or edge cloud provider who can help you integrate your applications not only on demand, but it's a way to test markets while eliminating the CapEx associated with a full scale build, reduce your operational costs, but just also evolve and support as you move into a new market and do those expansions with heightened management.
Absolutely. And, that speaks a lot about, a little bit of a callback to vendor consolidation here as well. The turnkey solution of the network sort of mandates a lot of upfront work, a lot of upfront research when we're talking about a migration or an expansion into a new location. A lot of times, our customers that we work with have no experience in this new country, right? They don't know who the major carriers are. They might know one or two international carriers that might be lit in that location. But otherwise, they have a metric for their customers for performance, and otherwise they don't know what's going on, right? And that's where the BMC provider comes into play, right? This is the performance you can get. These are all the different carriers that we connect to, and this is the performance that you can expect.
We'll talk about it a little bit later on too, but this is a good point when we're talking about greenfield markets and figuring out how things work in new countries. It's not just about the technical feasibility of your network, but what are the rules in the country? How do you keep your network compliant? Yes. Is your traffic going across the border? What the last thing anyone wants is to expand into a greenfield and then all of a sudden be shut down because of a government audit. Bad news.
Absolutely. We'll get into that in a little bit. Right now, we'll take a little bit of another track here and continue on the network services side. But we want to kind of bring in CSP, third party sort of connectivity availability for your use case, as well as IP transit. So transit, we spoke about a little bit. Transit, IP transit, really in some ways, is such a commodity. Everybody wants it. Everybody needs it. A lot of people provide it, and there's sort of different permutations of it. It's a little bit opaque when you're out on the market looking for these types of things. And so, we encourage not only readying your typical bandwidth usage, your traffic flows, for lack of a better word, your traffic shape, things like announcing IP addresses, BGP peering, ASNs, readying all these different things are all very, very relevant and very necessary when we're talking about these types of things.
Yeah. We talked a little bit before about the importance of the data center foundation, the location selection to support a bare metal cloud environment. Exact same thing is true for your transit. So if a vendor is working with multiple incumbent carriers and is strategically blending those incumbent carriers and peering with networks, these are the marks of a robust transit service. No different from those that are deciding not to use cloud and manage their own IT infrastructure environments. They still need to think about this sort of thing. But if you need the on-demand availability of cloud, you need to make sure that the vendor has thought about that and before you even move into that greenfield environment or expansion. So I'm thinking about a use case that really reverberated because it was with a major web scale video conferencing provider. They assumed when they first launched their service into a new and emerging market that the primary strategy was to control costs by leveraging a well-known tier one network. They were going to reduce that cost and pass those, the cost of goods sold onto their users. And it wasn't until they made the investment and they had users on the platform in production that things weren't going so well. They had unexpected latency because the routes that they were using with this single tier one network were leaving the country, hairpinning back. And unfortunately, that was really impacting the user's experience. So the bare metal cloud provider that they turned to that was able to solve the problem had already integrated not only the international tier one carriers as an option in their blend of internet service, but they also had and thought about in advance having a local transit provider in their blend, their internet blend. So when the major video conferencing provider moved their workloads to this particular bare metal cloud provider, they improved the user's experience literally overnight. And this is just because the bare metal cloud provider had thought about this type of use case in advance.
Yeah, absolutely. Super, super important. There's so much that can be done as sort of pre-work by your providers. And then sort of the other side of that same coin, of course, is that provider's ability to continue adjusting those routes or adding providers that you're looking for maybe a new project or a new business sort of direction. Having not only the flexibility and the scalability in terms of performance providers, all across the board, those are just so good for your network performance at the end of the day, because that always changes, right? Performance of different providers, it changes day to day, and routing is very important. And so
your users change, your user location changes. There's the last thing that you want to do is get user demand and not be able to manage it.
Absolutely, yeah. And, we're talking about network. We covered transit. And so bringing in sort of right alongside is our sort of topic about CSPs and hyperscalers. So we touched on this a little bit, but, obviously in the current market, hyperscalers are here to stay, where I think we're all aware and we concede to that. And in many of our partner and customer builds, connectivity to those hyperscalers, specific provider zones is integral to the global strategy. A lot of times our customers will already have things already on the cloud that they need to continue to maintain connection to. So, we also acknowledge, here at Zenlayer, CSPs, hyperscalers, these environments are still unparalleled when it comes to sort of standardized tools and workflows. When you need to be able to burst on that and have availability for certain products, there's just nowhere better for some of these hyperscalers. At the same time, though, unless your business is only dependent on that type of usage, generally what we've seen is that there's a point at which sort of your systems and applications can really benefit from having their known dependencies, their known traffic, known storage usage moved off, right? So we can talk about bare metal cloud in the context of storage services, regular traffic flows that you already know that you will be incurring. Because at a certain point, they start showing higher operational costs, right, compared to more traditional hosting. So this is a great sort of segment to really just really bring to mind that there's this trend of repatriation from the cloud, but what it often ends up becoming isn't so much of, hey, we don't want to touch the cloud at all. It's really going into a robust multi-cloud, a hybrid cloud, addressing high availability in certain cases, market coverage, and separate networks for your dev teams, your production teams. And so we found that a lot of teams are able to leverage the cost benefits on both sides and are able to right size to their use case.
Yeah, I mean, I can't go to a conference without hearing about multi-cloud strategies, especially when it comes to the supplementation we were talking about before. So it's just really critical, I think you'd agree, Arthur, to understand the dependency types that your business wants to maintain. There's a number of platforms that are available, and an analysis of that into a discovery of what third-party providers your preferred bare metal cloud platform operator will be able to support. So core reachability is a concern, scaling for or expanding, whether that looks like increasing your bandwidth commit for a particular portion of your network or adding a number of different offsite points of presence to your existing network. These are all things that really need to be taken into consideration. And I think, we're certainly available to help with that.
Yeah, absolutely. And, it's also another point that CSPs change, new regions come online, new players are entering the market. The same players sometimes will come out with different products and different services as they do, right? So having a provider that is up to date, not just with one or two clouds, but across the spectrum, really helps their customers and their users to be able to reliably and quickly connect to what they need, especially in terms of a migration. It's like, hey, I don't want to worry about can I connect to this cloud or not? I have so much other,
Yeah.
things to really worry about that I just need to maintain this connection. I just need it today. I need it tomorrow. And having, again, that pre-work done, that sort of region knowledge and expertise from the providers is key.
Yeah, I mean, cloud and the internet as a basis of it has become a utility. Mm-hmm. We don't expect that the power is not going to be on when we turn on need to charge our laptop or our phone. And here in 2025, the same expectation applies to cloud services. So
yeah, absolutely. All right, thank you, Evan. We are going to kind of bring this into our next stage here. We talked a lot about, do's and don'ts, things to watch out for across your hardware, your location, your network. And so we've reached a point now that, in the customer journey or the customer experience, we as a customer, let's just say we've talked to our provider, we've figured out all these details, and we have a great plan on paper. So what is the next step, right? Mm-hmm. We find that a lot of times it's best to have the product or the services speak for themselves. So mm-hmm. a proof of concept is key, mm-hmm. Not only just to evaluate your provider, but also to just evaluate how your processes are running with that provider, right? Whether it's a support process, it's a deployment process, or anything in between. A proof of concept is a great way to evaluate both sides and really figure out, is this the right direction that we want to go ahead and move towards?
Yep, makes sense.
Okay, and then it's just probably just as important as everything else on this list so far. Another great topic. So that's about security and compliance. I think I trust, in this current market with, all of the AI, we're increasingly becoming more and more globally connected, and everything, because security and compliance is top of mind, I believe, for a majority of teams out there. So vetting your providers and carriers, obviously this should be a standard practice, and, due to many different regional restrictions, licenses, and other factors, when your provider is operating in another country, it's very good to also understand what compliance restrictions may be present at that other country that your provider is following. And oftentimes a mark of a great provider is that they will let you know, like, hey, this is what we're seeing out there. These are things that you should be aware of when you're operating in that country. Mm-hmm. And these are things that we've done as a provider to sort of mitigate that and things like that. So that's also very key, especially for greenfield, like you mentioned, new mm-hmm. locations, anything like that.
Yeah. So we talked before about bare metal, cloud, and edge computing as it relates to supplementing your hyperscaler cloud strategy. And that's pretty significant for compliance as well. People, often talk about GDPR. Well, there are all sorts of other standards that global businesses, enterprises, and mid-market companies need to be thinking about. So to put that in context, hyperscaler cloud platforms are exactly that. They can vertically scale to a really impressive degree, but that requires that their data centers, which are in higher demand than they've ever been in, can also scale. So even for the big guys, the AWS, Microsoft Azure, it is simply not feasible to build hyperscale data centers everywhere. And in tier 2 markets globally, whether you want to comply with GDPR or a similar standard by keeping your data in a tier 2 market where a hyperscaler might not be present, or if your users are leveraging an application that requires or is impacted by a round trip between their eyeballs and the closest hyperscaler, which might not even be in the country, that round trip latency can really add up to the impact of the user experience. So when you supplement your hyperscaler strategy with bare metal that's on demand in a really wide portfolio of edge markets and tier 2 markets where your users are living and working, that can be vital as a comprehensive strategy.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thanks for tying that all up again.
No problem.
And yeah, so you're evaluating your providers, you're evaluating your own strategies here, and another thing that really comes up is I would say visibility across to your provider in terms of your future plans. Mm-hmm. Many times we see that these are not just one and done situations. A lot of times this is the first of many where they're just entering a market or they're just doing a migration. Hey, this is for now, but we have plans in the future. Critical to not only understand your own plans for that, but communicating that with your provider, right? So the provider understands, hey, there is a ramp plan that we're thinking about, or we are thinking about changing to a different type of, chassis or something like after the new year, or there's a new project. There could be any number of different things that dictate changes to the build or anything else like that. So future-proofing your build is a great sort of topic to talk about as well. And it really doesn't have to be super complicated, but future-proofing it, if you are moving solutions or changing solutions, let's just say, for example, for some of our examples might include an MPLS user enterprise today, but they're looking to move over to a more robust layer 3 VPN sort of global network to manage scalability, manage being able to add on additional POPs or new locations. The migration step itself is already a big feat, but able to consider new capabilities, right, for your future builds or ways to optimize or change your deployments. And it will always generally help, right, in traditional or in sort of deployed on demand for bare metal cloud for customers to really lock that down. Yeah. Okay. So we're coming up to the end of our session. We've covered a wide range of considerations and best practices. And of course, this is a great time to reconsider existing networks, servers, general builds. That's pretty much everything that I have in terms of your best practices. I know that we went over a couple of use cases here. We have a couple of questions lined up as well. But Evan, anything else to add here?
No, I mean, I'd love to. I've got a lot to add, but we've only got a certain amount of time, and I know that all of our audience members have a lot of things in their day. So, want to make sure we leave just a couple minutes for questions. I see that we've got at least one out there from the audience, and the question is, well, what are your best verticals? And I can certainly answer from our perspective here at Zenlayer, but I think given that we're trying to educate about the general kind of competitive landscape and vendors out there, let's talk about verticals for bare metal. The nice thing about bare metal is that it's very good at being able to accept whatever systems and applications that you already have in place. So whether it might be an enterprise focused on manufacturing or finance or video conferencing or gaming, these are all really good bare metal use cases. It's ultimately about the availability and the fact that the bare metal is on demand, can accept containers, can accept virtual machines, and there really is a wide use case for bare metal cloud on a global basis.
Yeah, that's right. So it's very, very true. Bare metal cloud, very hard to pin down to just a couple of verticals. However, I think that it's very relevant for any services that really care about the hardware layer. That's, I guess, somewhere that we can definitely start. And so you care about the hardware layer. Maybe you care about certain security features of the hardware. Maybe you're looking for specific networking capabilities like SRIOV for your NIC cards. So these types of things kind of dictate, sort of, let's just say, leading build types or considerations for certain verticals and certain customers in that, users in that kind of portfolio.
I mean, we don't want to gloss over the basics either. I mean, we've started to kind of get into the weeds in regard to the various different providers of bare metal cloud service and what they can do. But I think it would be good to kind of drive to a conclusion on some of the basics. Users out there who want to not give up resources to the hypervisor and get the most out of in every individual machine that they have leased from their bare metal cloud provider, get the most resources and the most value, are really looking at bare metal in order to be the most efficient. And we talked a little bit about security and performance variability. The nice thing about bare metal cloud and bare metal instances is that they are dedicated. The entire machine is dedicated to the user. You are not on a shared virtual machine host, and that has implications not only for performance variability or noisy neighbors, and it has implications for security, given that one set of applications, one business, one tenant is got the full use of that single machine. Yeah.
Nice.
Any other questions from the audience, folks? While we wrap things up, we have about 30 seconds. And if not, I'm Evan. I'm the Director of Sales and Alliances here at Zenlayer.
And I'm Arthur. I'm on the product operations team here.
We really appreciate your time. Thanks for joining us, and feel free to log any questions after the fact. We're always available.
Absolutely. Thank you all so much for another great session, and we'll see you on the next one.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.